Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lifers Podcast. I am Andrew.
I'm Tiffany. Welcome back to the Lifers Podcast, a Wecross podcast where we talk about all the Wecross things and only the Wecross things. And it is post GP.
It is. Hold on. We should redo the intro here.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Uh, Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Tiffany. Welcome back to the Lifers Podcast.
Very, very cool GP thing we were handing out at the GP.
Yeah, so these are our collab liver tokens. And when you put them together, it looks like we're sitting at a table together.
We are sitting at a table together.
Because we are sitting at a table together.
The cool thing about it is that I was like, yeah, I bet you there'll be a lot of virtual. I didn't expect it to be like 50% virtual or something like that.
Virtual, yeah.
So the collab liver tokens literally found use. And one of the cool things happened yesterday. We did our ceremony at our locals.
We did.
It was the
Niji-sanji
ceremony, and someone who came from out of town used used our collab live tokens, which was super adorable.
That also makes me really happy because I made the art for these myself, and I'm really proud of them, and I hope you guys like them too. These are also, I've gotten a lot of questions as to why we look like this.
Mm-hmm.
These are our Larig Sonas. So if we were turned into Larigs, this is what I imagined we would look like.
True. I like Halloween a lot. Tiffany, what's your
Mine is inspired by a sheep, obviously. So if you have one of these and you look really closely on it, you can see that my headphones have glowing ram horns on them.
And I'm not trying to promote our TCG store, but if you buy something on our TCG store, or TCG player store, I do actually include these until I run out. So
ooh, bonus.
If you want one, you can just buy something off the TCG store.
Yeah,
and
we'll send it to you.
Cool. Well, so hey Tiffany, we were at the Winter GP. GP.
We were at the Winter GP in March in Florida.
So it was as cold as you'd expect for it to be in Florida.
About 80 degrees. Which actually wasn't that bad. It was a lot colder than Vegas, that's for sure. I think when we went to Vegas, it was like 115 on the day of the GP. And this one, it was like partly cloudy, like threatening your typical Florida thunderstorm, 80 degrees. So it actually felt like really nice to be able to go like inside and outside between rounds.
Mm-hmm.
And the air conditioning actually wasn't totally out of control, which I appreciate. Also, totally. I just want to apologize if I sound different. I'm getting over a sinus infection, which I think I picked up at the GP. So if I sound a little strange, it's because I'm a little sick.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we didn't put this GP recap out as soon as possible. I could have done it on my own, but I wanted Tiffany there because, again, Tiffany did better than me at the GP.
We did very well.
We both did really well for what it's worth. But it was a good GP.
It was good.
Outside of the GP, we went to Disney World. We got there a little early so that we can go to Disney World. It was my first time, which was very fun.
Yeah, I decided, hey, since we're going to be in Florida and we're only like 30 minutes away from Disney World, let's grab a day ticket to Magic Kingdom and see if we can't get on the Tron roller coaster ride, which we did.
Yeah.
It was super fun.
I cannot...
But the picture and everything.
I cannot express enough. When I was like, really young, like 16, 18, and just thinking about going into like card games semi-professionally or whatever, I remember hearing stuff from like LSV and that crew. If you guys remember Channel Fireball from back in the day, yeah, they're gone now. They're I think they're gone now. Anyways,
I think they're a store.
They're not a store anymore. They stopped selling stuff. They were the whole thing. Anyways, it is way back in the lifebread of card stores.
Anyways,
he said, there was some pushback once about Magic always being in these sort of like semi-exotic locations for their GPs and stuff, and they were like, I really wish they could be in an area that was more conducive to people being able to get to in mass or something, right? And he pushed back against it, being like, you guys don't understand how stressful the GPs are, and not only are they stressful, the only things that make them really amazing experiences is that you can hang out with your friends from all across the United States or whatever in a central location. You can go to someplace new, and have a fun vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And outside of that, you get to experience, different culture, different food culture, stuff like that than you normally would. And when the GP's over, you can hang out with the friends who won, and it makes your experience better, and it makes your losses better. Or if you won,
Yeah.
everyone can celebrate them together with you, vice versa, right?
And then if everyone lost,
And everyone lost, you
then you
guys
just,
you guys can deal with it together,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But that was the thing. These are the things that make GP's events special. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad, like I said, we went to Disney and we hung out with our friends afterwards at a very cool speakeasy. That is literally all I wanted to do this GP. Like it made everything better. I got 16th place, which is spoilers. And I was a little I
Spoilers.
was a little
As if they
upset.
didn't publish the
I know, I
list
know, I know.
already.
I got 16th place, and so I made it into top 16. I'm proud of myself for that. There was something that kept me out of top 8, and because of that, I ended up really upset that I didn't make it top 8, even though I really feel like I could have, and I was very well practiced for this one.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that Pigeon, my testing partner, got first place,
Mm-hmm.
and also we got to hang out with some of our friends. We
Mm-hmm.
road tripped down here together.
Yeah, that was fun actually.
All that stuff made it just a really actually fun, positive, memorable experience that overwrites my negative experience of being like, I didn't quite get into top 8 finals,
Yeah. I will say that like the camaraderie for this GP in particular was not like better than the last one, but I feel like because we got to meet everybody at the previous GP, then like it really solidified all of our friendships because it's kind of like we talk to you on the internet all the time
Mm-hmm.
and we play with you like through Discord, but the last time I saw you was Vegas
Yeah, yeah.
and none of us lived there. Like what are you doing here? It's like it's such a cool like surreal experience. And yeah, we road tripped with some of our friends coming down,
Mm-hmm.
so we road tripped with one of our locals, which was a really great experience.
The top
Top
Toko
Toco
top
player.
Toko player in the United States right
Yeah,
now.
best Toco player in North America. And then we picked up a friend from the airport.
Yep.
And then we drove down like the 7 hours or
Yeah,
whatever,
our pretty
like
close
together.
friend. If you guys know him online, he's Bubble.
Yeah, he's pretty great.
Yeah.
And then from what other people, there were like two main hotels that people were split between,
And they were right across the
and
street
they
from
were
each
right
other.
across the street from each other, which was also pretty close to the venue. And one of the hotels provided a like what would typically be like a boardroom or
Mm-hmm.
like just like a meeting room or whatever for people to come and congregate and just like play together. And a lot of people told us that that was like a fantastic experience. I didn't go because I am an old lady and I need to be in bed by 11.
It's true. It's true.
um,
We had to get up really early for Disney to make the
yeah,
Tron
we had to get
ride.
up really early. I was
Um,
up at 6 a.m.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then guys, I did a lot of testing, like over 100 hours of testing
Yeah.
prior to this. So when I actually got to the venue, I was like, I don't need to test. I'm fine. and I
You
still
needed
stick
a
by it.
break.
I needed the break more than I needed
Yeah.
the last minute game jamming.
And then the other thing is that I really liked the venue that the event was held in as well. Ironically, there was like three other events happening in that same event hall.
Hmm.
So there was the Wecross GP, which is obviously the one that we were in, but
Hmm.
there was also a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament and like a collectibles like trade show that was happening as well,
Yeah.
which kind of gave the whole venue this like really cool like geeky vibe,
Yeah.
which I really liked because then it was just like, like no one's looking at you weird
Yeah.
because we're all here for like the same reason
It was
basically.
funny too because some of our the people who went there also played Yu-Gi-Oh prior to this game. They walked around the venues at Yu-Gi-Oh. They came back and they were like, "Yeah, I'm really glad that this is my main game now." Because they were like, "Oh, it's the same deck over and over again up there."
No shade to Yu-Gi-Oh players. But I thought it was cool. It was cool being in an event space where like, there's lots of energy, which I really like. I like being in places that have a lot of moving kinetic
Yeah,
energy
and I
like
think this
that.
is the first time I really seen at the GP prior to this. There was maybe a couple people from the same stores, but it was mostly a lot of people from different areas. This one, it really felt like there was a couple like strong stores, right? That
Yeah.
did stuff like, for example, Mythic Games, right? Is the
Shouts out to Mythic.
they really came in as a crew and did pretty well as a crew,
Yeah,
kind of thing.
there was Mythic, there were the
Yeah.
guys from North Carolina. There are the guys. I think there was a crew that was coming in from LA.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then there was itty bitty Team Peach State
Yeah,
that came
there
in.
was two distinct testing groups from the internet too, right? You've
Yeah,
got me, Pigeon, you, Tom, Bubble Person, Jimmy in one group over here, and then I think Starford Scob, Doozle, some of these other guys from
yeah.
a different online testing group, the card games Discord server, really. So
I think
so
there were some people from Card Guard in there as well.
yeah, there was some Card Garden folks.
Hmm.
Like so there was some, some core testing groups that were kind of like
Come
smashing
together.
against each other, which
Which was
was pretty cool.
cool.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was very cool. Like that does make me feel like next time we do it, we should get some kind of like
Do we need team gear?
we need some team gear or
Yeah.
something. Roll up in team gear
We
is
were a
cool.
Team Life Burst podcast, and we'll probably next time also be Team Life Burst
Yeah,
podcast.
I just gotta convince some of our online testing partners to come under our banner. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We got there, and as always, right, like Tiffany and I brought tons of water and Gatorade, and Gatorade for mostly because the salt, so you do sweat a little bit when you're doing this like
Yeah, make no mistake.
yeah.
This, like, look, you're not playing football or anything, but you are exerting a lot of like concentration and
Hmm.
energy, and that takes vitamins and minerals in your body to
Yeah,
process.
so I had Gatorade and water both. And I also had my stack of beef jerky or turkey jerky
Yeah,
because
we have
that's
these
just
little
what I
like,
do. I just can't I'm too nauseous to eat real carbohydrates, so I just need like quick protein.
protein. Yeah.
I get so nervous at the beginning of every event still. Like it has not changed. I
Yeah.
was slightly more comfortable than I thought I was last time at the
Mm-hmm.
GP. This is my second time at a GP, but I was still pretty nervous. So I knew I was going to eat light that day
Yeah.
and then eat heavy later.
I didn't get my tea in the morning, and I think that maybe threw me off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
I had, like, typically, like, I have a cup of tea and some sort of, like, carb-based breakfast, and I did not have that for this GP. I don't think it hurt me, but it was a little
This is the thing
weird
is
being like, okay, all I have is meat, snacks,
yeah.
and water.
I mean that's typically
They
if
did have
that
a concession stand at the event space. We just didn't partake.
it was going to be expensive, and I had my jerky. But dude, if the tea is the thing that hurt you in this event, you would have gotten fun. You were in contention for top eight.
I know.
So,
Yeah, let's talk about the event itself, shall we?
yeah,
So, something that I really appreciated that was different this time than previous time. Well, there's two things. One is that the top 8 rounds were all best of one, which I think was the best call
if you're
because
not going to split it into 2 days, best of one top eight has to
yeah,
happen.
it was great because the entire event was over, I think by like 8:30, something like
Yeah,
that. Which was great because then we
it
could
was
like
over by 7.
yeah, it was over. Like it was
Yeah,
over like by the time
it
it
was
was like
supposed to be over. Yeah,
yeah. And what was great about that in particular is that when you have like top contending friends that are trying to finish their major rounds, you don't want to rush anybody,
yeah.
but you also want to go out to dinner together. So what's cool about it being best of one and it ending on like a at a reasonable like evening time is that we were able to like go out with all of our friends like to dinner and then we went out to like cocktails and screams after, which was also a very fun experience, especially during spring break, but I
Did not realize
digress.
it was spring break. Well, you're getting
We
to that. You'll get to
forgot.
the post party after.
Anyways,
But yeah,
um
it was good. What was the second thing that you were?
the second thing that I really appreciate and I hope that other events incorporate this in specifically into their Wecross structure
Mhm.
is that Carta Magica set the round timers at 42 minutes
Mhm.
so that you would have 2 minutes of time to roll for first, shuffle your deck, mulligan, lay out your life cloth, and
Yeah,
set up so that you open at 40 minutes.
yeah.
And I legitimately think that those 2 minutes made all the difference in the world against certain matchups.
I do.
Because like it is always a struggle every single time, especially if you're playing something like Control or Esper or like God forbid Mugen or like
Mhm.
anything like
Mhm.
that, and you have 40 minutes to like make it or break it. Having just 2 minutes of like official time to actually set up your mat is 100% worth it.
Yep.
And I hope that they keep that moving forward. I know that like after 7 rounds, it's like 15 extra minutes of time overall, but those 15 extra minutes save a lot of heartache, and I think that it's well worth it.
Yeah, I
Well
agree.
done.
Um, I mean, I prefer the extra 5 minutes to be honest with you. And that comes from something that happened to me at the tournament, which is I got a double loss. Because just time clicked too far. I don't want to get super into it because it hurt me pretty badly. And because it was early in the tournament, like we're talking the early rounds,
Yeah.
it knocked me out of top 8 contention immediately, which sucked. My other loss came to Mario, and he deserved that win. I recognized as soon as I went into the attack step, I made a mistake, and if I didn't make that mistake, I would have won. Actually, not probably won. I would have won. So I feel very much like those. I just needed to get a little bit more consistent in my gameplay. And if I did that, I very easily would have made it to top 8, and I would have, I think, done well in the top 8 that was here. But my disappointment, my frustration aside, as soon as that happened, and I was very angry.
You were very upset.
I was very upset. I put it back together. I went undefeated after that. Five rounds. So I did well. Five and two is there was 3 people, maybe even 4 people in the top 8 with a 5-2 record. So it wasn't like I did bad, right? Like in my head, anyone who's in top 16 and above, they're all fantastic. That's an amazing record. Getting into top 8 and how that breakers work is coin flip matchups. Then at that point, where did your stuff come into play? So anyone who got 5-2 should feel incredible about themselves. I'm glad I was able to get the mental fortitude to come back and put myself in a winning position to get myself back into 5-2. And I'm proud of myself for that, even if I'm disappointed at the exact breakdown. But you, on the other hand, insane over here.
I do not.
Let me take a second here to brag about this woman. She didn't make it in top 32 last GP and said
any of the ceremonies.
Right, and said this time I'm getting into top 32. No one's gonna stop me. And
like,
instead,
period. That was my only goal.
Instead, she comes in 13th place. Like she's like, I'm gonna at least make top 32, and instead becomes the best Tama player in the United States right now, getting a sleepy mailed out to her for it.
I do like the sleepy design.
Girl, you killed it! Such player growth. Just applause. Such player growth.
You know what shocks me about that though is that like I wasn't even nervous going into the. I don't mean to be like I wasn't even nervous, but like I wasn't nervous because I didn't have the like expectation of I have to go to first place.
Yeah.
I was literally like, all I need is a 4-3 split and I can get into top 32. And that's it. And I know most of the people in this room and Wixoss players in general are very nice. So I wasn't even nervous going into it because I had set my expectations so low that I actually think it ended up making me perform better because I wasn't so worried about how I was going to perform.
Yeah.
Like even people like asked me the night before, they were like, "Oh my God, are you nervous?" And I was like, "No." And they were like, "Why?" And I was like, "Because I've been practicing this deck for a year, and however I play today is how I'm gonna play today, and like that's it." And whatever, I'm going to Disney World anyways.
Yeah, right? Like... And your only losses were to 2 people in top 8. One of them won it all. So
yeah. Although, that was a close game. I ended up going in my 3rd round in it. I ended up going against Pigeon, who ended up winning the whole thing. Congratulations. He's a fantastic player. Really, 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 really smart player. Deserves it 100%. And I gotta tell you, it was a close game.
Yeah, you almost knocked him
out.
I
almost knocked him out of it. That was a fantastic game, though. I will say, I know exactly when I lost that game. Looking back on it now, and I told him this like after we finished. I was like, I lost that game because I grew my Umer clear a turn too early. I think that's what lost me the game because he was playing it was a Madoka discard deck, and when you're playing a more like aggro deck, and you go up against discard, not having cards in your hands is really crippling. So one of the common pitfalls that aggressive players fall into is they burn out all of their options for draw too early in the game. And that is exactly what happened. And I saw the pitfall coming and I was just like, wee! And I just jumped right in and I deserved to lose that game. But it was a fantastic game nonetheless. It was close.
Yeah, based on what you told me, I genuinely think that if you mirrored the turn later, you probably would have.
I probably would have.
You would have snapped out some cards and then probably
yeah. But yeah, that was a fantastic game. And then the second game that I lost was against Scob, and he was running a Ange deck. Yeah, which that that was a fast game. It was a really fast game. It just like, he's also a fantastic player, a really smart deck builder too. And he just like blew me out of the water. I like didn't even know which way was up. I was like, I don't even know what's happening. Like not even a like fully loaded Deus shield stopped all the damage that was coming at me. It was like 6 damage in one turn, and I was already down to like 3. I was like, there's no way. I just like gotta go all in, and I still lost, and that's fine. Because like it was kind of like it was an uphill battle anyways.
Yeah.
And again, another like fantastic game. Like I don't really have a whole lot of like regrets or like other than like the whole like, yeah, I maybe could have done like this and this and that would have lost me the game. But like fighting against Ange with Tom McClear was like that was already gonna be tough. And like I'm just happy I got to play it really.
Yeah, I mean, like, and again, bursts make the difference there too. It's one of those things. We'll talk about Ange in a second. But the cool thing, at least for a recap video, is we got a really good chance to see the entire sort of like what the low, mid, and top tables were like. Because you were the top tables the entire time, right?
I was mid to top, I would say.
Yeah, and
I kind of stayed somewhere between the 20th to like 4th tables is kind of the range I stayed in.
Yeah.
Which for those of you that are unaware, when you get placed at a table during GPs, it's kind of telling you like where you're ranking. So the lower the number of the tables, like the closer you get to table 1, the higher you are ranked currently.
Yeah, and that's like a little weird for round 1 and 2 because like
it's just random.
Like it's just like all right, so at 1 it's completely random. If you're in number 1, like our local Jimmy got placed and got to play his virtuals
on stream.
Then
you can watch the Hellfire stream. It should be coming out soon.
Yeah. That's just you're random there, and then after round 1, it's 50-50, right? If you're above the half table, that means that you're the winning below, and then it starts becoming more and more top tables, right? So I ended up in mid tables after round 1, dropped down to low tables, crawled my way back up mid tables, and then finally got to high end tables on my last round. So I got to see the others. You know, you got to see just basically the top. Which was cool.
Yeah, which was actually shocking to me because I didn't once go up against a sachet deck, and that was one of the matchups that I was actually really worried about.
I think there was 3 in top 16 though, so I think you just dodged them.
Maybe I did, which does tend to happen. Like there is sort of this like randomness when it comes to pairings with GPs, and like it's very possible I just like dodged my way out of them.
Yeah.
Which I guess probably served me in the end, like not going up against a single Remember deck or a single Sachet deck, I think probably served me very well.
Yeah, so
I won't say that it wasn't something to consider.
No, so in the end, this was another one where GP aggro reigned supreme. Because it was just like that. It really, honestly, at all of our GPs, they have always been leaned towards more aggressive than not more aggressive. To be honest with you.
In the North American one.
It's one of the reasons why I kind of always joke with my friends, like, oh yeah, for online stuff or whatever, I'll run 2 to 3 Exias, but you're gonna have to convince me not to run 4 Exias at a GP, just because there's just that much aggression, not aggression, but like damage push constantly happening. And we'll get to top 16 or top 8 deck lists in a second. I don't have them on me, but I can tell you what they were. They were 2 Ange, 1 Madoka Esper control, 1 Remember Esper control, All right, so one Millaloon that was more like a tempo aggro,
Mm-hmm.
aggressive tempo aggro. One Sachet, uh, one Umir
Yeah, one
that was an,
Uber.
Esper Umir deck, and then the last one was, why am I brain farting on that?
Ange?
Two Ange,
Okay.
one Sachet, two control decks, one Umir, one
I mean, that's top
Millaloon.
six.
It's top seven. I'm forgetting the last one off the top of my head. Give me a
All
second to
right.
look. Um,
In my matchups, just to give you an idea, I went up against um a bit of an interesting Tama deck, and then I went up against Pigeon's Madoka, and I also went up against two Mel decks, which I wasn't expecting at all, but I was very happy to see because I love playing Mel and I also love playing green. So it was really cool seeing those. And then I think I went up against another Madoka deck and an Udith and an Anj. And
mhm.
those are my 7 rounds.
Yeah, mine were mostly against virtuals. So in the mid to low tables, yeah, it's like black virtuals as far as the eye can see. Um, Everyone wanted
Mm-hmm.
to mill you out, and everyone wanted to play virtuals. They wanted that double refresh really badly, and
Mm-hmm.
I surprisingly I found my remember control deck, which was geared towards what I thought was going to be the top decks of the meta, struggled a bit with it. I was still able to pull out the wins against them, but it struggled a bit.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I had some red Enterburn decks that I played against. I had a Adams deck that I played against, and I had when I that was finally when I crawled out of the mid tables and made it to the high tables. I my last round was against an Anch player.
Mm-hmm.
So white virtuals floated to the top there, I
Yeah.
think.
I
Um,
think I only went up against like two virtual adjacent
mm-hmm.
ones. Um, and I have to admit, I feel like I handled them pretty easily because virtuals tend to really like their level ones, and that doesn't pair up too well against a very bouncy Tama deck that is running over pursuits. So I feel like for me, I didn't really struggle too hard against them, but maybe if I was playing a different deck, I would have had more issues with it.
Dash Hirana. That was the other one that made it into top eight. Good, I got
Sorry, I have
there,
to
got
cough.
there, got there. And that's a pretty aggressive top eight if you notice
It
it.
is pretty aggressive.
But it's worth mentioning the two more controller strats, right, were the ones that made it to the top of the top eight,
Mm.
including not necessarily including Kevin Ross. Kevin was I love I love testing against him anytime I get the chance to.
Mm-hmm.
We did a lot of Adams testing back in GP1, but he was also on a remember more mid-range remember, but still remember control-ish Esper stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he got knocked out early by Pigeon from top eight.
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically, he also could have climbed the route. But all it's worth mentioning, basically all aggressive strategies got knocked out of top eight round one of top eight.
Mm.
That first beginning finals, which I think is a discussion we can have here. So we ended up in a scenario where there was a lot of aggressive strategies,
Mm-hmm.
but still control decks and more of these proactive control decks.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference between them.
Proactive control is an interesting term.
Yeah, pushed to the top anyways, and it's made me learn a lot because this conundrum kind of played out for me 2 weeks earlier before the GP.
Mm.
I was on Anj aggro, and I think me and Pigeon found one of the best versions of Anj aggro, not the one that showed up in top eight, but a different version that allowed you a bit more card filtering than the
Mm-hmm.
normal version does, specifically to get guards. Early guards, really important in this format. If you're going to go to turn 5 and you manage to find 2 guards before you get your hand discarded out, that is still like 45% of the game that you've guarded,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's kind of important. So what we found was when we kept testing it is that aggro just isn't quite good. I know it's crazy to say that, especially because you're playing what we'd consider an aggro deck.
Yeah, I mean it's very yeah. It's it's a Tron joke. Oh my God, I'm so dumb. Um, yes, but it is a very, very, very calculated aggro.
Right. And I think that's an important distinction to make, is that when you're opening up all three lanes and hoping for the best, you are asking to be blown out by life burst. Now, if you don't get blown out by life burst and you snowball the game, congratulations, you did it. That's the hope. But what we found was testing against Esper, it was 60-ish%, even against the best Ange decks against Esper. And the breakdowns was either Ange destroyed the deck in front of it, or Esper barely won. And we thought that in our initial testing that was because Ange was just the better deck. What we found is, and we're talking hundreds of games that we did here.
Yeah, to be clear, you were testing every single night since the announcement of the GP
for 2 to 4 hours.
Yeah, like 2 to 4 hours every single night.
I had been only 6 hours of sleep for months,
So, and also putting everything in a spreadsheet, gathering all the data, crunching the numbers.
And upon us doing it long term, specifically me and Pigeon as well as Bubble in this scenario, and then you helping out with the aggro side of it too.
I was like, I will only play Damoclear against you.
What we found was that data that we were getting, that Ange runs you over or you barely squeak by, isn't the real story. The real story is, do you life burst on the first or second attack? Yeah, I know it's a crazy thing, but if you life burst on the first or second attack...
Wait, when you say do you life burst, as in when you swing you hit a life burst, or when they swing you flip a life burst?
The person who's more the slower deck.
Okay.
If they flip a life burst on that first attack and stop the second damage, the game suddenly becomes way harder for the aggro deck.
Wow, because it messes with the momentum so early?
Correct. So all you need to do as a control deck to autocorrect for this is, if you hit that life burst, or the second swings too, right? So the second set of swings when they've opened up 3 lanes and they're going in, if you can stop even one of those damages, right, that win percent also goes up for you. If you do both, it's almost guaranteed that the control deck wins at that point. The only caveat is the control deck also needs to win the game soon afterwards, which is not difficult. Aggro decks blow up their own resources to try to...
They burn bright but fast.
Right. So being able to crack back and win, not difficult. Especially in a world now where you have Deus as a level 2 that you can use. And there's a lot of other tricks that we learned too. Just filling out the boards with level 2s means that you can't get over pursuited. You're probably gonna win now.
Sad.
Or you have your 8,000. This is one of the reasons why I like Falulu better than Bruno, even though Bruno gives you straight up card advantage.
Yeah, but Bruno needs to be in a specific lane, and that's annoying.
Right, there's that too. But this is also a level 2 8,000, which is resistant to getting destroyed right away. So it ends up being the scenario where it doesn't really matter how well you open up the 3. What matters is that you don't get life bursted if you're the aggro deck. You got to dodge the life burst, which is where I think Tama does it better a little bit than Ange does. Because Tama has safer attacks, being that attacks with L-rig twice.
Yeah, I was about to be like, how am I supposed to control if my opponent flips life burst or not?
But you can control if you get hit with the target up life burst because you're downing stuff.
Yeah, this is true. And yeah, that's something that as a Tama player I'm constantly thinking about. Is calculating if I'm going to be punished for my attacks, and if so, what is the likely punishment for it?
Yeah, it's something I'm going to go more in depth into in its own podcast, because I think it's worth it. A combat math podcast.
Combat math.
And it was requested too by some of the people that I were talking to at the GP. They were like, "This is a really interesting idea. I'd love to hear more about it."
Sure, we'll do it.
So we'll talk about it there. But I thought it was worth bringing up ahead of time. Especially because we're going into a Dissona meta at some point, which is going to be...
It's going to be interesting.
It's going to be more aggressive as well. Is that
Aggro,
These
aggro.
aggro decks actually still seem to fall apart under tight scrutiny, and that's
Mm.
when we tested, and I swapped over to an Esper deck 2 weeks before the GP, and was like, all right, let's see what happens. Once you apply that correct pressure, it falls apart. And consistently, right? And so when I got to my last round at the GP, and I was up against an Ange deck, we flipped over, and I think he was maybe excited to see, oh, you're a slower controlling strategy. I got this. And I was like, whoo, Ange, let's go. I can win this one really
Yeah.
easily. I flipped over a light burst, not my first attack round, but my second attack round, and I was like, cool, I'm still in the game. And then proceeded to slowly take apart everything until I had the win on the board
Mm-hmm.
with me. And it's just that's something that I think these more proactive control decks. And I think the interesting thing is evolving from being a reactive control deck to a proactive control deck. It's actually probably better for these control decks anyways, because in Wecross you have to win the game at some point, right? Like
That's the whole point.
it's not like Magic or these Yu-Gi-Oh decks that can just sit and do an infinite combo win or something, and they can just this is their HP bar waiting for it to go down, and they do their thing and they win the game. You have to make active steps to it. This is my dog, Tippy. She's very cute.
Come here. Come here.
Let her be. She's fine.
All right.
So yeah, it still kind of it was interesting to see it end up like that at the end. Is that all these aggressive strategies sort of fell apart in the top 8?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my take so far on the what the top 8 was. Uh, I really liked it. I mean, and I had again my lower field was my midfield, I should say, was full of these black virtual strategies, which I think I underappreciated. Double refresh, pretty strong.
Yeah.
Pretty strong.
Pretty strong.
I'm glad I had the Exias to stymie the rest of the damage that was coming towards me.
Mm-hmm.
4 Exias, that was the right number. I have been underplaying how good Exia is. Exia is fantastic. And when we go into this Desona meta coming up, I'm really excited for the fact that Miko says you only need 2 Desona out, because I guarantee you that third Signy is going to be an Exia.
Do the Exia dance.
Yeah.
Do the Exia dance.
It's so funny because like a bunch of people at the GP also talked about the Exia dance. They were like,
which was funny because I was like, that was like one thing we mentioned. Like,
you get an Exia? I got 2 Exias. I got 2 Exias. I'm gonna vanish your Exias by attacking my Exia into your Exia. Oh, I got another Exia.
Oh, we're gonna bounce the Exia. Oh, right. Well, what lanes do I want to go down?
Exactly. Yeah. Now the Exia dance was extremely valid, and you play 4 Exia in your aggro deck.
I do.
Did you do the Exia dance?
No.
Not once. Not never.
I mean, okay. So listen, something interesting that I have found with Exia, at least in my experience, and it could just be that I am somehow playing Exia wrong. I have found that Machina deals with Exia pretty efficiently on the second attack phase grow. So my Exia dances were actually pretty few and far between, but that's just kind of like how I ended up drawing my hand, and like it was a better position to have an Exia and a Remember down, so that they would have to choose between keeping a Remember on the field, knowing that it's going to stay on there for a while and get taxed from it, or deal with an Exia on the field that's going to shut down a lane. 9 times out of 10, I would say that they chose to banish the Exia because Exia is freaking annoying. And as a Tama player, it's really not the biggest loss for me.
No.
And also, I don't really recall. I think I went up against like maybe 2 or 3 decks that had Exias in them, or at the very least, like as a Tama player, that like when we see Exias on the field, we're like, you could shut down my lanes. I'm still gonna. I'll just use that Signy to like double attack anyways.
Right.
So for me,
and usually one of those light bursts that you flip open opens the lane, so you have one lane to block.
Yeah.
You're just like, I don't care that you have an Exia. I'm just gonna down these 2 and
yeah.
her.
Or if I were to flip something that was like return target upped, Exia is always upped because it ups itself at the end of every turn. So the Exia dances for me were not nearly as dramatic as I've seen them in other games.
Yeah. So with my Remember control, and it really, I still think I would say it's a control deck, even though it borderlines on mid range at this point. without fail, I almost was always, I would say 90% of the time, going for I am using Super Celestia Saber to grab Mew and Exia and a card. Because that just always was the game-winning play. Was to grab a Mew so I can open up one safe lane of damage, grab an Exia so I can shut down damage if I need to, and then grab a guard because I have to guard, you know. It also puts cards in my hand, which is great against the Esper deck, and it also grabs me the milled things that my opponent mills me out with if they're trying to double refresh me. So it was always a game-winning play. I on the Remember deck actually played Remember. It's the first time I ever done it, and I 100% the right call. At the first GP, I played 4 Exias and 3 Remembers. And then for this one, I was heavily considering 4 Exias and 2 Remembers, and I cut a Remember. I know, unlike you, who is looking for it all the time. I was like, Remember Memorial sucks. I just because the lanes I always wanted Mew and I always wanted Exia. That was like basically all of the
Sure, it
lanes I
serves
wanted.
your deck a lot better.
Yeah, and then for my extra slot, that is a Typhon. Typhon is an insane card.
I hate that card.
No one is playing it.
How am I supposed to do
Oh,
that?
it's so good. It's so
and
good.
You
15K
can
twice
because you can just you do it once in the early game, and then you do it again in the later game. I can't deal with it at either time it's brought out.
It's so good, and not only is it good on turn 2 when you play it, and then you're just like, yeah, go bounce it, right? If the aggro player doesn't know how to get rid of it, it's just constantly blocking a damage for you. Against control, it's even better. It's weirdly even better because every time they don't get rid of it, that's one less card that you have to fill out your lanes for. Right? Which means that's one extra card in your hand. Which means it's one more card that you have that you don't need to discard the guard for. Which means that you're now winning the game. I know, it's so like domino, but it's fantastic. And not only does that 15k, if I put out a level 3 and a level 3, right? 12ks, and a 15k, I can ensure my opponent never has a hand because I'm also vanishing all of their Signy at every point. There's no escape. They can't put a level 3 in front of my 2k because it still dies. Remember dies. It kills Remember. And here's the other thing that it does. You got a Machina, negative 12k? That's pretty cool. I put down a 15k and still growing, the 15k. I'm still swinging in the open lane now. It's nuts. It's crazy.
It is pretty crazy, although I will say that during the next set for Desona, where all of the Lyrigs require you to exceed, that card's going to become a lot less relevant.
Oh, I agree with you on that front.
Although it is
but it's exceed 3, so it still can do it.
Yep.
Exceed 3 plus exceed 4.
You'll be able to do that
right
once.
Number.
Yeah, but for this go around in particular, like if you're not exceeding a lot, like if you don't have a piece that you're going to exceed for or a spell that you're going to exceed for, 2 Typhons. That'll shut some stuff down.
Yeah, we got a tier list coming out, I think, on Friday from when this video comes up. So you'll see what's up there too. But you also need to have a hand outlet in this new meta because between Tama, between Tama and also Anj, and Anj is a real deck. Even though
Anj is a real deck. You heard it here first.
I know. Even though I'm saying it fell apart under some scrutiny, I think it still is the closest deck I've ever had, aside from the one time with Nova that I genuinely thought this was the deck that could actually beat every single deck in the format. It is the closest. It didn't quite get there. It has just enough weaknesses. It can't get guards really well, and its hand filtering is not extremely good. And the hand filtering is good, but what they're grabbing is the virtuals, and there's only a handful of virtuals that are really, really good. You end up in a scenario where your deck is still sub 50% against the entire meta. So it's still a very, I think spoilers A tier. It's still incredible, right? I still would put it up there with the Esper and the Tama decks and all these types of decks. But I would say that you need hand discards at that point. Not only, sure, you're up against also the Esper decks, which want to rip your hand apart, so the hand discard outlets aren't good there, but they're extremely good against everywhere else.
Anything else you want to say on it?
No.
It's okay.
No, I'm very happy with my deck choice that I made. I'm very happy with my Remember deck. I think it is as close to perfect as being the best deck in the format that it could be right now. And
Hmm.
I think the same could be said with yours. We retooled your Tama Clear, so
Yeah, we did.
it was not a one for one. It had more level twos, for example, than the normal one does. So that way you could do
Yeah.
3-2-2 splits.
Yeah. Like we definitely tweaked that deck so that it reacted more to what how I wanted to play it.
Hmm.
And I think that that also makes a difference is tweaking decks in a way that suits you as a player.
Yeah.
So originally we had like what was it called? Like Darkness Sevens in there.
Which I think were
And
fine, but they weren't
I think
great.
that they were fine, but the way that I play the deck, they just very quickly became irrelevant for me. So we took them out and we switched them out with some other stuff that I think ended up making the deck more, um, just like more consistent for
Yeah,
myself.
the exacerbated weakness too, which is one of the Tom weaknesses, is that after it's not like it's pre turn 5, they've got fine amount of card draw. Post turn 5, it falls flat.
Hmm.
And so Darkness Sevens being like, I remember one specific game when we were testing, I was like, I'm dead this turn. I'm dead this turn. The only way out is you draw 2 spells, and you drew two
And I
spells.
drew two spells, and it was a Darkness 7 and a Over Pursuit, and I was like, well, I guess that's that. But also the other thing that it does is because Darkness, I mean, you want some amount of black in the deck for Deus,
Mm-hmm.
if it comes up. Um, but the fact that Darkness 7 was not only a spell, but also a black card, actually ended up hurting me in more games because Tama's so Enter hungry.
Yep.
And most of the Enter that you want for Tama, especially for over pursuits, is white
Mm-hmm.
specifically. So two if I have two Darkness Sevens and a multicolor black and white Signy in my Enter, guess what I can't pay for?
Yeah.
Hardly anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And it just for me, I understand that there's other players out there that Darkness 7 works out really well, and that's great. But I just wasn't that type of player. So we tweaked it to be more towards how I want to play, and I think that that made a
Yeah. Like one
difference.
of the things that we did was
Like
we
I
added
didn't miss it during the
or
GP,
no,
I'll tell you that. Like I
we
did not miss having a Darkness 7.
right. We put a Florist in there. And I don't think you ended up really using the Florist at
I
all
think I
during the
used it
GP.
once.
But one of the other weaknesses is Umir against someone who knows how to sculpt their hand correctly against the opposing Umir. Um, Getting the mill damage is difficult,
Mm-hmm.
and it's necessary. You have to win those games. So adding a Phalaris there, I think, helps. I think there's a world where the Phalaris could be something else, but the, there needs to be some amount of mill in that deck in order for it to function. And
Mm-hmm.
I think uh, our swap to Phalaris there is actually kind of a smart one
Yeah.
for that kind of thing. It covers that weakness, and you have enough wiggle room in the
Yeah.
deck to pull that off.
Yeah, I think that the single for Loris is like kind of funny whenever I would draw it. I'd be like, "Oh yeah, you're in this deck." Yeah, I guess I'll play this, and then it would like freak my opponent out, and
Is
then
that
it would like, because then they would be like, "Well, now I don't know what's going on," which does add a certain element of surprise, but especially when you put down like a Phalaris and a Remember and like I don't know, like a Yuki or
it
something,
can
it
weirdly
suddenly becomes like, whoa, what is the threat here?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah. And I mean, like sometimes that's I know it's bad to say this, but sometimes your opponent's making a mistake is your out.
hmm
Right? Sometimes you
yeah,
win a game that you're losing because your opponent's making a mistake because they incorrectly see the issue. And so if that lightning rod at any point to the Phalaris instead of your actual threat, great. You win
yeah,
those games. So I don't know. I think it was a good addition
I think so
as a one
too.
of. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like I was playing the Tama deck for a really long time. Like, as many of you know, I took Tama as my center for mono white aggro for the Vegas GP. So I've been playing Tama a really long time. And then very soon after the GP, we began experimenting with the Tama clear deck, and I just like stuck with it. And I think that that made a difference for me too, personally.
Yeah.
It's just like, when you play a deck for a year, you become pretty good at
Yeah,
it.
I think Pigeon could probably even say that too. I think
He's been playing Madoka a really long time.
yeah, and I think he actually wasn't exactly at the end of this GP wasn't exactly sure that he made the right choice, if I remember correctly from
Mm.
something he said. But he knows the deck in and out. That was the thing that he played as his side deck at all of the events while we were testing. So he just had more Esper experience than I did at that point because we were both very soundly on Ange till very close to the GP time. I think he was off Ange 1 month before and I was off Ange 2 weeks before. So I think that helps. And one of the things I wish I had was a little bit more practice with my Remember deck, just a teeny bit more, like 1 week more, and
Yeah,
it would have
another
been fine.
week, yeah.
And I but outside of that, I think that was great. That's one of the reasons why I'm pretty, and I'm gonna say right now, pretty much gonna be on Miko Miko for
You're just
for
calling
a
it right
while. Yeah,
now.
sure, why not? I think Miko Miko is a really strong thing. My favorite thing about Miko Miko is it's Dude Sona, so I can still play my favorite card, which
Is
clearly is
Exia?
Exia. Exia is not my favorite card. I just think it's the most necessary card in Wixoss
It
right
is
now.
pretty good.
And it's good against dude. That card's good against control matchups, mid-range matchups, aggro matchups.
Mhm.
Good against all of them.
Yeah,
The only ones that it's theoretically bad against is things that have certain combos that can do work around it, like Tama. But even
hmm,
then, I'd still rather have an Exia than a level 1. You know what
yeah.
I mean? So it it's. I think I'm gonna put a lot of effort into mastering Miko Miko
Okay.
coming up.
I think I'm gonna switch back to Mel.
Because he thinks she's cute.
It's because I think that deck is fun.
Yeah, why not?
I really, well, especially like the Desona Mel, which I'm interested in because it gives stuff as like Super Lancer, which you can actually use to win a game.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big things that we've always said about Green that it's missing is on-demand Lancer.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to do that,
Mm-hmm.
I think will be pretty fun to play around in. And you guys know that I am a Green stan. I like the way that Green operates in this game. I just wish it had more support and I'm gonna experiment. I'm gonna experiment with some L for a
Yeah, I
while. I'm gonna
definitely
I'm gonna give Tama a little bit of a
I
rest.
definitely think you should. And I think it's gonna be good. I think here's my hot take that I think people are not expecting me to say. I think set 12 is gonna come out and people are gonna be very excited about the Persona, and I still think Remember Control might actually be the best deck in the format. Um, it's twofold. I'm looking into it now. I'm starting to build those decks. I have guys tons of videos coming out to make up
Yeah,
for the fact that we did like no videos 3 weeks prior. Like
yeah.
we were very focused on the GP. Now the GP's over. I've got interviews coming up, tier lists coming up, new deck builds coming up, decks that we tested that no one knows about in the meta right now and are actually pretty good. Yeah, like
Got some secret
we got some secret
sauce.
sauce coming out. Things that I think are great there. That all to say, right now, Anj was not all it was cracked up to be. Uh, DXM was not all it was cracked up to be. Uh, Dash Hirana was not all it was cracked up to be. When the Disona stuff comes out, it's one set worth of Signy. There's still a missing half, right? 13. When
Mm-hmm.
set 13 comes out,
Mm-hmm.
it's more of a complete whole, and it could do more damage, I'm sure. But right now, it's a lot of these things have really strong Elrig decks and
Mm.
half-baked main decks. And
Mm.
because of that, they're way weaker than you'd expect them to
Yeah.
be. So I genuinely still think that we need to take an actual realistic approach and not just freak out and think the sky's falling when Personas show up. I know everyone's excited to play them. Color Break Rule potentially coming up as well soon too.
Potentially, but it has not
Has
been
not happened
confirmed.
yet.
So don't go playing decks like that quite yet because it still has not been confirmed for North America. It might
Yeah.
happen, but not right now.
I genuinely think there's enough support in all of the sets that have come prior that Remember Esper Control deck, a Tama Clear deck, still as powerful, if not more powerful, than the Disona when they come out in set 12.
Mm.
So we'll see. I might eat my own words here on this front, but it's tough. It's not a complete package. I'm looking at Nico Nico and realizing the piece choice that you choose is weird right now, just because there's not a lot of choices, and there like I mean there'll be more choices because of the color break rule, but it's still awkward. Um, Hanyo isn't amazing Elrig deck with a lot of damage output and kind of crappy main deck cards, because at the end of the day you still need to play 16 to 18 red cards, and like that's like almost four of everything, every red Desona. And those I'm gonna say it right now, I'm re-looking at some of the Desona, and more importantly some of the Desona that are specifically geared towards, you know, that center, like Hanyo's center, and they're not that great. Like I genuinely, it's like when we got the
Post your
team
hot takes in the
yeah,
comments down below.
it's like when we got the team Signy for DXM, and everyone was like, "Oh, this one's gonna be great. It has assassin it can get on demand." And I looked at it and was like, "I think this is awful. I would play 0 of these." I think I played 1 and then quickly went back down to 0. Like Hanyo's, specifically Hanyo's like specific Signy is not that great. It's really average, and so there's like some red cards that I play over that. I don't know. So I think temper your expectations is all
Temper
I'm
your
gonna say.
expectations is pretty good advice, I would say. Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. It's always fun when a new set comes out, because people get really creative with their decks, and that's always really fun to see.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, do we have any last minute shout outs that we want to do at the end of the podcast?
Well, for the GP, I guess, you know, just shout out to our testing group, specifically. We played a lot just with everyone online and things. So there's some of my shout outs are going to be missing you, which no, you know, sorry if I missed you, but specifically shout outs to Vision. Congrats for winning. Shout outs to Bubble for always being there to help me test Esper at the very last end when I really needed some experience against Esper versus Esper matchups to know what it
and also just being one of my best rivals.
I know, absolutely best rivalry. Shout out to you, driving all the way to the GP.
There and back again.
Shout outs to Tommy, or sorry, Jimmy.
To Jimmy.
For locals, you know, always being there and sharing the hotel with us and splitting all that junk with us, hanging out with us. Shout outs to cool. The organizers of the event, as well as the judges, Neat, Tetris, Hellfire. You guys are awesome. Thank you guys for everything you do.
Thank you so much for judging and keeping us straight in the games.
If you haven't become a member yet to Dexus on Patreon, do it. It actually costs to maintain those servers. We're a small enough community that matters. So it's important.
And Dexus is the best deck building website you can go to.
They're using it in Japan now too. Like literally, like for events, they're submitting Dexus links now in Japan. That's how big of a deal it is.
Support your local programmers. I want to give a shout out to all of the new players coming into Wixoss. We love having this little community grow. I think you'll find that many of us here are pretty good-natured people that just want to have fun playing a game. Shouts out to Ren, who I met at the GP. She was playing a aggro Toko deck, which is pretty cool. She let me look through it, and that was really fun. It was great meeting you. And shout out to all the players at the GP.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for coming out. Thank you for playing, and we can't wait to see you at the next one.
I'm thrilled. This is the first time I've ever actually finished it. Like last GP I finished and I was like, I don't want to touch this game for a month. This time I'm like, why is no one wanting to test online right now? I'm like, what do I do without this?
Like the day after we came back from the GP, you were like talking to me about all these like new decks that you were formulating, and I was like, bro,
let me drive home.
Can we just like have a day that we don't talk about Wixoss? Yeah, like like we just got home from the GP, and you're like, what if we do this? And I'm like, stop.
What if we did though?
Okay, what if we did?
What if we did?
We'll see.
Bye guys.
Subscribe to the Life First podcast if you want to see more videos of us ranting about stuff like this. Also make sure that you subscribe for all the new upcoming content that we just talked about, and we'll see you guys next time. Make sure you always flip a life burst. Hopefully you flip a life burst second if you're going up against an aggro.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Bye.